Hello, once again, this is Marcia Criollo. For today's video, we're going to talk about manufacture bricks. So bricks are formed by the clay or shell, the forms that are dried, fired into a durable ceramic product. They are produced by mixing ground clay or shed with water. After that, it's formed into its desirable shape, dried and fired. There's three ways to form the shape and the size of the brick. The first one is known as the stiff mud. The second one is known as the soft mud, and the third one is known as the dry press process. Brick shrinks during the manufacture process as vertification occurs. Bricks can vary in size depending on the way that it was made and are addressed by the ASTM standards. The process used to form the brick plays a big important role on its texture. Moving on, moving on, the plants of brick manufacturers are located close to the source of their raw material. This is very beneficial because it helps reduce transportation, produces few wasted materials, and recycles the process waste. Brick manufacturing requires a lot of water, but the best water to use is water that doesn't evaporate because it could be reused for more production. The most common energy source for brick kilns is natural gas, oil, and coal. Most bricks are sold to locations nearby the manufacturing plant, therefore, it reduces the transportation. Um, Another important thing is that back then they had no machines, therefore, the bricks were made by hand, which took more time to produce. Nowadays, we use machines which produces bricks at a faster pace. Moving on, we're going to talk about the phases of manufacturing. The first phase is known as the mining and the storage of the raw materials. The second phase is known as the preparing of raw materials. The third one is the forming of the brick using the three methods I talked about previously. And the fourth phase is drying the brick. After drying the brick comes firing and the cooling the brick, and finally the sixth phase is dehydrating and storing the finished product of the bricks. Let's start with the first phase, known as the mining and the storage. So clay and shells are mined with powered equipment, which are then transported to the manufacturer to be used and reduced in size. The preparation of the raw material is when the is when large clay lumps and stones are broken up into smaller pieces. This material is processed by size reduction machines. So once the materials are in desirable size, the mixing process can be proceed. The mixing process, the mixing process comes with three methods. The three methods I already mentioned you before. Let's start off talking with the first method known as the soft mud process. This process is when moist clay is is pressed into simple rectangular models by hand or by machine. To avoid the sticky clay from holding the molds must be dipped with water to produce bricks with a relatively small, dense surface known as the water-stroked or sand mold bricks. Moving on, we have the second process known as the stiff mold and mud process. This is a process that is used mainly throughout construction bricks. This process is where clay containing 12 to 15% water is pressed through a vacuum to remove any pocket air, in which it is then released through a rectangular die. As the clay leaves the die, the texture or thin mixtures of the colored clay may be applied to its surface. The rectangular column of moist clay is then pushed and then cut into bricks. Moving on, we could talk about the third method into forming bricks, also known as the dry press process. This process is used for clay that shrinks a lot during the drying process. Clay is mixed with a minimal amount of water and is pressed into steel molds by a machine working at a very high pressure. After after the molds have been produced by using any of the three processes, the bricks are left to dry to 1 to 2 days depending on the method that was used. Once this is dry, we can enter into the firing process or the phase. Let's talk about the firing phase of the brick. Bricks are fired between 10 to 40 hours and depends on the kiln type. So kiln is basically an oven used to dry or to burn. In the situation, it will be to dry the bricks, right? So there's three stages into firing the bricks. The first stage is where the bricks are first stacked into a kiln card ready for firing, in which the opening passage between the bricks allow the hot curing gases to penetrate to the interior of the stack. So in a brick, there's like three holes. So that's will be where the quick gases will penetrate to have a reaction to each brick. After that, the cards of bricks are then rolled into the far end of the gas fire pyramid tunnel kiln. When fire has been completed, the large doors are then opened at near the kiln, and then the cards of the bricks are rolled out of the rails. After the fires have been resorted, they are strapped into queues for shipping. So now I'll show you some pictures. So the first process I talked about was in the situation where the bricks are stacked into current carts. Then thereafter, they are processed into this tunnel. This is the tunnel kiln where they are going to be fired. After that, we're going to have the last step in which they are removed from the tunnel and they are stacked to be distributed to different locations. Before this, let's talk about the cooling in the dehatching process. Cooling time for tunnel kilns is about 10 hours, while the cooling time for petroleum kilns are from about 5 to 24 hours. The process is important for the brick manufacturer because the rate of cooling has a direct effect on the color. Dehatching will be the last step as mentioned in the previous slides. Dehatching is the process of unloading kiln cards after the bricks are cooled. The bricks are then sorted, graded, and packed for ship distributions. Which I showed you the picture over here. This would be what I meant by dehatching the concrete, which they are placed into a different location. After that, they're going to be distributed. Fun facts about brick production, right? The color of the brick depends on the chemical compression of the clay or shell and the temperature and the chemistry of the fire in the clay. High temperature produces darker clays, and the iron that is penetrated in most clay turns the bricks red. There is no standardized brick size, but in the US, we use a modern brick that is often used, which with a diameter consisting of 4 inches horizontal and 8 inches vertical. Dimensions of bricks used in the US are established by the Brick Industrial Associations. So this will be the end of my presentations. As I already talked about the manufacturing process of brick, and it's important process, as well as how they are like distribute, how they will distribute and processed out after the firing of the bricks. So this will be the end of my video. I hope you learn more about the way the bricks are formed, and thank you.